The space station Omega-7 floated in the darkness between stars. It was a neutral place where different species came to talk instead of fight. On this day, a small human ship docked at the station. Inside was General Una Park and 12 of her best soldiers. Una was 52 years old. Her black hair had streaks of gray, and her face showed the lines of someone who had seen too many battles. But her eyes were sharp and full of life. She was famous across human space. People called her the Peacemaker because she had ended the Mars Rebellion without killing anyone. She believed that words were stronger than weapons. Today, she came to meet the Keth Empire. The Keth had been causing trouble at human borders for years. Small attacks. Ships going missing. Colonies reporting strange visitors in the night. When the Keth Emperor asked for peace talks, Una volunteered to go. Many told her it was dangerous. She went anyway. "General," said her assistant, a young man named Junho, "the Keth delegation is waiting in the main hall." Una nodded and checked her uniform one last time. She wore no weapons. This was a peace mission. "Let's go make some friends," she said with a small smile. The main hall of Omega-7 was huge. The ceiling was so high, it disappeared into shadows. Lights floated in the air like small stars. At the far end of the hall stood the Keth. They were tall creatures, almost 3 meters high. Their skin was gray and rough like stone. They had 4 arms and eyes that glowed soft yellow. They wore armor made of black metal that covered their bodies like shells. In the center stood Emperor Vorn himself. He was larger than the others. Gold decorations covered his armor, and a crown of twisted metal sat on his head. He watched Una approach with eyes that held no warmth. "General Park," Vorn said. His voice was deep and rumbled like thunder. "How brave of you to come." Una stopped 10 steps away and bowed slightly. "Emperor Vorn, I hope today we can find a path to peace between our peoples." Vorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Peace. Yes. That is why you are here." He raised one of his 4 hands. Behind Una, doors slammed shut. The sound echoed through the hall like a death sentence. Una understood immediately. She spun around to see Keth soldiers pouring from hidden doors. Her 12 guards raised their weapons, but they were surrounded in seconds. "What is this?" Una demanded, turning back to Vorn. "This is a lesson," the Emperor said. "Your species has forgotten its place. You spread across the stars like insects. You act as if you matter. Today, I will remind the galaxy what humans truly are." The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Una's soldiers were good, but the Keth had planned this for months. One by one, her people fell. Una watched Junho die with a Keth blade in his chest. His eyes found hers as he fell, filled with confusion and pain. Something broke inside Una then. Not her spirit, her control. She grabbed a fallen weapon and attacked. She moved faster than the Keth expected. Her first shot took down a soldier. Then another. Then another. She killed 12 Keth warriors before they finally brought her down. A massive Keth grabbed her from behind, lifting her off the ground. Another took the weapon from her hands. A third punched her in the stomach so hard she couldn't breathe. They dragged her to Emperor Vorn and threw her at his feet. Vorn looked down at her with something like amusement. "You killed 12 of my soldiers. Impressive for a human." But pointless. He gestured to a floating device nearby. "Camera. A broadcast drone. Signal is going to 3,000 worlds," Vorn said. "Billions of beings will watch what happens next. They will see what happens to those who forget their place in the galaxy." He reached down and grabbed Una by the throat, lifting her into the air. "Humans," he said to the camera, "are animals. Clever animals, but animals nonetheless. They pretend to be civilized. They pretend to be strong, but look at them." He threw Una to the ground. Before she could rise, he kicked her. The sound of her ribs cracking echoed through the silent hall. "Look at how icily they break," crossed human space. People watched. In homes and ships, in colonies and stations, billions of humans saw their hero lying on the ground. Blood running from her mouth. Vorn grabbed her arm and twisted. The bone snapped with a wet crack. Una screamed despite herself. "This is your protector," Vorn announced to the camera. "This is your great general. She came here to talk about peace." He laughed. "There will be no peace. There will only be your submission." He beat her for 3 more minutes. Each blow was calculated. Each injury was meant to humiliate, not kill. He wanted her alive. He wanted humanity to see their hero broken. Finally, he stepped back. Yuna lay on the floor, barely able to move. One arm was broken. Several ribs were cracked. Blood covered her face, but she was still conscious. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her head. The camera drone floated closer, capturing every detail of her ruined face. Emperor Vorn smiled. "Do you have any final words for your people, General? Any wisdom to share?" Yuna looked at the camera. Through the blood and pain, her eyes were still sharp. "Still alive? Still burning," she spoke 4 words. Her voice was quiet but clear. "We don't forget. Ever." Vorn frowned. He had expected begging, crying, broken spirits, and shattered pride. Instead, he saw something in her eyes that he didn't understand. He saw a promise. On Earth. Admiral Taiho Quan watched the broadcast in silence. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so hard the metal bent. On Luna, Captain Hannah Shin stopped teaching her class. Her students saw tears running down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. On Mars, Colonel Minho Beek watched with his soldiers. When the broadcast ended, nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. In billions of homes, across dozens of colonies, humanity watched their general beaten and broken. They watched an alien emperor mock them, call them animals, promise them slavery, and something changed. Something ancient woke up in the human heart. Something that had slept since the species first climbed down from the trees and learned to make fire. The broadcast ended. Emperor Vorn returned to his throne, satisfied with his work. His advisors congratulated him. The galaxy had seen human weakness. The message was clear, but the Emperor had made a mistake. He had studied human history. He knew about their wars, their cruelty, their capacity for violence. What he didn't understand was simpler than that. Humans didn't fight. Hardest for territory or resources or pride. They fought hardest for each other. And he had just hurt one of their own in front of all of them. In the silence after the broadcast, humanity began to move. Admiral Taiho Quan stood before the United Earth Council. The room was silent. 50 of the most powerful humans in the galaxy sat in their chairs, still processing what they had seen. Some had red eyes from crying. Others had faces like stone. All of them were waiting. Taiho was 60 years old. He had served with Unipark for 20 years. They had fought together, laughed together, and built the peace that humanity now enjoyed. She was not just his colleague. She was his friend. His sister in all but blood. He took a breath and began to speak. 2 hours ago, General Unipark was beaten on live broadcast. The entire galaxy watched. Emperor Vorn wanted to show them that humans are weak, that we are animals who can be broken and controlled. He paused. Looking at each council member in turn, he made a mistake. The council members leaned forward. "The Keth think we are weak because we choose peace," Taiho continued. "They think talking is the same as surrendering. They don't understand us. They see our kindness and think it means we cannot be cruel. They see our patience and think it means we cannot be fast. They see our mercy and think it means we cannot be ruthless." His voice grew harder. "You're about to learn the difference between a people who prefer peace and a people who are incapable of war." Council leader Jimeno stood up. She was an old woman with white hair and sharp eyes. "What are you asking for, Admiral?" "Omega Protocol," Taiho said. "Full military mobilization. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have." Silence filled the room. Omega Protocol had never been used. It was the final option, the button you pushed when survival itself was at stake. "The Keth Empire controls 3 star systems," another council member said. "They have thousands of warships. We would be starting a war we might not win. We don't have to win, Taiho replied. We have to send a message. Touch one of us, and you face all of us. If we let this go, if we do nothing, then every species in the galaxy will know that humans can be beaten without consequence. We will never be safe again. Jimeno looked around the room. Vote, she said simply. Every hand rose. Omega. Protocol was activated. The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. On every colony, in every station, the announcement played. General Una Park had been captured. The Keth had beaten her on live broadcast. Earth was going to war. The response was immediate. On Luna. Captain Hannah Shin received her recall order while standing before her flight students. She was 45 years old and had been retired for 5 years. In her prime, she had been called the deadliest pilot in human space. She had shot down over 200 enemy fighters in the border wars. But she had grown tired of killing and chose to teach instead. She read the message on her screen. Her students watched her expression change. Class is canceled, she said quietly. Forever. She walked out of the room and headed straight for the recruitment center. By evening, she was back in a cockpit for the first time in 5 years. It felt like coming home. On Mars, Colonel Minho Beek gathered his unit in an old warehouse. These were the soldiers of Ghost Company, the most elite special forces in human military history. They had been disbanded after the last war, their missions classified, their names erased from official records. Nobody knew they existed. Minho was 53. His face was covered in scars from battles the public never heard about. He had been trying to live a quiet life, running a small farm with his wife. That life was over now. Y'all saw the broadcast, he said to his soldiers. 30 men and women stood before him, some gray-haired, some barely middle-aged. All of them had the same look in their eyes. Command has asked us to come back. I told them I needed to ask you first. Don't insult us, said an old woman named Yoon-ji. She was 62 and had more confirmed kills than anyone in the room. When do we leave? Nobody disagreed. Across human space, the same scene repeated millions of times. Retired soldiers dug out old uniforms. Factory workers signed up for military training. Scientists left their labs to work on weapons. Teachers, doctors, farmers, artists, everyone who could contribute did. An old man named Dong-ho arrived at a recruitment center on Earth. He was 74 years old and walked with a tut. Kane, I'm here to enlist, he said. The young officer at the desk looked uncomfortable. Sir, with respect, you're quite old for combat service. I flew bombers in the Jupiter campaign, Dong-ho said. I watched that broadcast with my grandchildren. They asked me why we weren't helping General Park. I had no answer for them. He leaned forward. I don't need to fight. I can train pilots. I can repair engines. I can do something. Put me to work. The officer gave him a uniform at Earth Command. A woman named Dr. Somi Cha arrived to meet Admiral Taiho. She was 48 years old, with short gray hair and cold eyes. 20 years ago, she had been captured by the Keth during a border skirmish. They held her for 3 years. She never talked about what happened during that time. You want me to help plan the attack, she said. It wasn't a question. Taiho nodded. You know them better than anyone. I know how they think. How they fight. Where they're weak. Somi sat down across from him. I've been waiting for this moment for 20 years. I just didn't know it until I saw that broadcast. Can we win? Taiho asked. The Keth are strong, Somi said. But they're arrogant. They've never faced an enemy that fights the way humans fight. They don't understand us. A cold smile crossed her face. They're about to learn. Far away, in the Keth homeworld, Emperor Vorn celebrated his victory. His advisors praised his wisdom. His generals assured him that humans would never dare respond. They were too divided, too weak, too primitive. But one person in the palace felt differently. Princess Mira was Vorn's daughter. She was young for a Keith, barely 100 years old. Unlike her father, she had studied humans carefully. She had read their history, watched their stories, learned their languages. She knew what her father had done. Standing at her window, She watched the stars and felt something she had never felt before. Fear. Father, she whispered to herself. You have no idea what you've awakened. 60 days. That was how long Admiral Taiho needed to prepare. 60 days to build ships, train soldiers, and plan the attack. It seemed impossible. The Keth would expect months, maybe years. They would be wrong. Because when humans decided to move, they moved together. And together, they could do impossible things. The galaxy watched in confusion as human space went dark. Trade stopped. Communications went silent. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared. They hadn't disappeared. They were getting ready, and when they returned, the galaxy would never forget what happened next. The shipyards of Earth had been quiet for 15 years. After the last war, humanity had chosen peace. The great factories that once built warships were turned into museums. Children took field trips to see the massive machines that their grandparents had used to build fleets. Now, these machines woke up again. Workers flooded into the shipyards by the thousands. They came from every colony, every station, every corner of human space. Engineers who had retired years ago returned to their posts. Young people who had never seen war learned to weld armor and install weapons. Admiral Taiho Quan stood on a platform above the main construction bay of the Seoul shipyard. Below him, 10,000 workers moved like ants around the skeleton of a massive ship. Sparks flew through the air like orange fireflies. The sound of hammers and machines filled the space like music. 60 days, said his aide, a young woman named Jian. They said it couldn't be done. They don't know us very well, Taiho replied. The ship below them was called the Vengeful Spirit. It was one of 12 new battleships being built at the same time. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever created. Each one was designed for a single purpose, to destroy the Keth. But the new ships were not Taiho's secret weapon. Show me Project Hammer, he said. Gin led him to a secure area deep beneath the shipyard. They passed through 7 security checkpoints before reaching a massive underground hangar. Inside, hidden from all eyes, sat 50 sleek black ships. They looked nothing like normal human vessels. Their surfaces were smooth and dark, designed to absorb sensor signals. Their engines were silent. Their weapons were hidden until the moment of attack. Stealth destroyers, Gian explained. We've been building them in secret for 30 years, just in case. Taiho walked up to the nearest ship and placed his hand on its cold surface. The Keith have never seen anything like this. They won't know we're coming until we're already there. Across human space, other preparations continued. On Luna, Captain Hannah Shin had gathered the best pilots humanity had ever produced. 100 men and women, each one capable of flying like no other. She called them the Black Falcon Squadron. They trained in secret flying missions through asteroid fields and around moons. They developed new tactics, new formations, new ways of fighting that the Keth had never imagined. The Keth fight in straight lines, Hannah told her pilots. They believe that strength wins battles. They've never faced an enemy that moves like water, that attacks from everywhere at once. She demonstrated by flying her fighter through an impossible series of turns, destroying 10 target drones in 8 seconds. When we meet them, she said, they will think we are ghosts. On Mars, Colonel Minho Beek trained his ghost company in the Red Deserts, but his small unit had grown. Veterans arrived every day, eager to join. What started as 30 soldiers became 300, then 3,000. Minho split them into specialized teams. Some trained for ship infiltration. Others learned to disable defense systems. A few practiced the art of moving silently through enemy territory without being seen. The Keth believe war is about big ships and big guns, Minho told them. They're not entirely wrong. But sometimes the most important battles are fought by small groups in dark places. At Earth Command, Dr. Somi Cha worked day and night on the battle plan. She had survived 3 years as a Keith prisoner. She knew how they thought, how they fought, how they made decisions. Their weakness is their arrogance, she told Admiral Taiho during one late-night meeting. They believe they cannot lose because they have never lost. They don't prepare for failure because they can't imagine it. She pulled up a map of Keth's space on the display. Their early warning systems use these frequencies, she said, pointing to data on the screen. If we jam them at the right moment, they won't know we're coming until we're on top of them. And then we hit them fast and hard. We don't fight for territory. We don't try to hold positions. We strike their military targets, their command centers, and most importantly, their broadcast stations. Taiho understood immediately. We show the galaxy the same thing they showed them. Exactly. They used broadcasts to humiliate us. We use broadcasts to destroy them.
Us.
The most surprising development came from outside human space, the Null. Confederacy was a group of small species that had lived under Keth threats for centuries. When they heard about humanity's mobilization, they sent a secret message to Earth Command. We have weapons, the message said. We have been building them in secret, waiting for someone brave enough to use them. We will give them to you. The Pale Council, another group of species, offered something different: intelligence. They had spies throughout Keth space. They knew the location of every Keth warship, every military base, every weakness in their defenses. Why help us? Taiho asked their representative, a tall, pale creature with no visible eyes. Because we have been waiting for someone to stand up to them, the creature replied. The Keth have bullied the galaxy for too long. We could never fight them alone. But together, with you leading the way, perhaps we have a chance. Deep in Keth space, General Unipark sat in her cell and waited. The Keth had beaten her, but they had not broken her. Every day, they interrogated her, demanding information about human defenses. She told them nothing useful. What the Keth didn't know was that she was not alone. Princess Myra visited her cell in secret. The princess had been horrified by what her father had done. She brought food, medicine, and most importantly, information. Your people are coming, Myra whispered one night. The entire galaxy is talking about it. My father doesn't believe it, but I've seen the reports. Human space has gone dark. They're preparing something. Yuna smiled despite her pain. They're coming for me. How can you be sure? Because that's who we are. We don't leave our people behind, ever. With Mira's help, Yuna began sending coded messages back to Earth Command. Small pieces of information about Keth's defenses, patrol schedules, and weak points. Each message was a risk. If they were caught, both of them would die. They sent them anyway. On the 60th day, Admiral Taiho Quan stood before the assembled fleet. 700 warships floated in formation around Earth, the largest military force in human history. Every ship was crewed by volunteers. Every pilot had trained harder than they ever had before. Every soldier was ready to fight. Taiho's voice went out to every ship. They wanted to teach us fear, he said. Instead, they reminded us who we are. We are human. We don't leave our people behind. We don't forget those who hurt us. And we never, ever give up. He paused, looking out at the fleet that humanity had built in 60 impossible days. Today we go to bring our general home. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you hurt one of us. 700 ships jumped to hyperspace at the same moment. The war had begun. The Keth detected the human fleet too late. Their early warning systems should have given them hours of notice. Instead, thanks to Dr. Somi-Chaz jamming frequencies, they had minutes. By the time the alarms started screaming across Keth space, human ships were already emerging from hyperspace. Admiral Taiho Quan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. Around him, officers worked their stations with focused calm. They had trained for this moment. They were ready. All ships report ready, Admiral said as communications officer. Begin the operation, Taiho ordered. The first target was Outpost 7, a Keth military station near the border. It held 300 warships and 50,000 soldiers. The Keth commander there was sleeping when the attack began. He never woke up. 50 stealth destroyers from Project Hammer appeared out of nowhere. They had traveled in complete silence, invisible to all sensors. Their first shots destroyed the station's communication systems. Their second shots disabled the shields. By the time the Keth realized what was happening, Human battleships were already in firing range. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, Outpost 7 was captured. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. But Taiho's strategy wasn't about destroying enemies. It was about sending a message. Human technicians immediately took control of the station's broadcast systems. Within an hour, footage of the victory was playing across the galaxy. The same channels that had shown Yuna's beating now showed Keth's soldiers surrendering to human forces. "This is just the beginning," Taiho said, in a recorded message that accompanied the footage. "We are not here to conquer. We are here for our general. Surrender her, and this ends. Refuse, and watch what happens next." Emperor Vorn watched the broadcast from his throne room. His yellow eyes burned with rage. "Impossible," he growled. "How did they build a fleet so quickly? How did they get past our sensors?" His advisors had no answers. They stood in terrified silence, afraid to speak. "Send the second fleet," Vorn ordered. "Destroy them. All of them." The second fleet was the pride of the Keth Empire. 200 of their best warships, commanded by their most experienced admiral, they moved to intercept the human forces at Crimson Reach. Strategic point between stars. Captain Hannah Shin was waiting for them. Her Black Falcon. Squadron numbered only 100 fighters. Against 200 warships, they should have been nothing more than insects. The Keth Admiral laughed when he saw them on his sensors. 100 fighters? He said, "The humans have gone mad. Destroy them." The Keth launched their own fighters. 300 sleek attack craft. Each one piloted by a warrior, trained from birth to fight. Hannah smiled when she saw them coming. "Remember your training," she told her pilots. "They fight like machines. We fight like humans. Show them the difference." The two forces met in the darkness between stars. The Keth flew in perfect formation, exactly as they had been trained. They expected the humans to do the same. Instead, the Black Falcons scattered like startled birds, then reformed in patterns that made no sense. They attacked from above and below, from left and right. From angles that shouldn't have been possible, Hannah herself flew through the center of the Keth formation, her guns blazing. She destroyed 4 fighters in her first pass. Then she spun around and destroyed 4 more. "What are they doing?" the Keth Admiral shouted. "They're not following any tactics." That was exactly the point. The Keth trained their pilots to follow rules. Humans trained their pilots to break them. In 17 minutes, the Sky Hunter squadron was destroyed. 300 Keth fighters reduced to floating wreckage. The Black Falcons had lost only 11 pilots. When Keth reinforcements arrived, Hannah broadcast on an open channel. Should have brought more. Then she led her squadron in another attack, this time against the warships themselves. They targeted engines and weapon systems, crippling ships without destroying them. Soon, the mighty Second Fleet was nothing but a collection of drifting hulks. Across the galaxy, billions watched. Species that had lived in fear of the Keth saw them broken and helpless. The message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. The next target was Vega Station, the largest military base in Kith space. It was a fortress, protected by layers of defenses and thousands of soldiers. A direct assault would cost hundreds of human lives. Colonel Minho Beak had a different plan. His ghost. Company infiltrated the station through maintenance tunnels that the Keth had forgotten existed. They moved in complete silence, disabling guards and security systems as they went. The Keth never learned to look down. Minho whispered to his team. "They're too proud to check the places they consider beneath them." In 4 hours, Ghost Company had reached the main control center. They disabled the shields and opened the gates. All without being detected when Admiral Taiho's fleet arrived. The mighty fortress fell without a single shot being fired. The Keth commander surrendered in complete confusion. Unable to understand how humans had appeared inside his base like ghosts, Emperor Vorn's rage turned to fear. His advisors began to disappear, fleeing before his anger could find them. High Commander Drawl, his most trusted general, was captured trying to escape in a stolen ship. He agreed to cooperate in exchange for his life. Giving the humans even more intelligence about Keth's defenses, The war was only 3 weeks old, and the Keth Empire was already falling apart in her cell. General Una Park heard the sounds of celebration from her guards one day, turned to sounds of panic the next. She smiled despite her pain. Her people were coming. She had known they would. Princess Mira visited her one last time. "Your fleet is approaching the homeworld," she whispered. "My father is terrified. He's talking about using weapons that could destroy entire planets. I can't let that happen." "What will you do?" Una asked. "What I should have done a long time ago." Mira's eyes were determined. "I'm going to end this." On the 40th day of the war, the human fleet arrived at the Keth homeworld. 700 ships surrounded the planet, blocking out the stars. Billions of Keth civilians looked up at the sky and waited for fire to rain down. They had heard stories of human cruelty from their emperor. They expected the same treatment they had given to others. Instead, Admiral Taiho Quan broadcast a single message to the planet below. "People of the Keth homeworld, we are not here for you. We are not here to destroy your cities or kill your children. We are here for one person, our general, and for your emperor, who must answer for his crimes." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Surrender him to us, and this war ends today. Your people will be safe. Your world will be untouched. We give you our word." On the surface, Princess Mira stood before the gates of her father's palace. Behind her, thousands of Keth citizens who had grown tired of their emperor's cruelty. "Open the gates," she commanded. The guards hesitated, then stepped aside. The end had come for Emperor Vorn. Colonel Minhobeek moved through the palace corridors like a shadow. His ghost company had entered through doors that Princess Myra had opened for them. Keth guards lay unconscious behind them, disabled but alive. Human soldiers did not kill without purpose. The palace was beautiful in a cold way. High ceilings covered in gold. Walls lined with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Statues of Emperor Vorn stood at every corner, his 4 arms raised in triumph. None of it mattered to Minho. He had only one mission. "General Park is in the lower dungeons," Mira said through his earpiece. "Third door on the left?" "The guards have already fled." Minho reached the cell and broke the lock with one strike. Inside, sitting on a small bench, was General Una Park. She looked terrible. Her arm was still bent at a wrong angle. Bruises covered her face, now faded to yellow and green. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but her eyes were the same as they had always been. Sharp, alive, unbroken. "Took you long enough," she said with a weak smile. Minho knelt beside her. 63 days, General. We had to build some ships first." Despite everything, Una laughed. It hurt her ribs, but she laughed anyway. "I knew you would come. I never doubted it for a second." Minho helped her to her feet. A medic appeared and began treating her injuries. As they walked out of the dungeon, they passed Princess Mira, standing in the hallway. Una stopped and looked at the young Keth princess. "Thank you," she said simply. Mira bowed her head. "I am sorry for what my father did. I should have stopped him sooner. You stopped him when it mattered." Una reached out with her good hand and touched Mira's arm. "That's what counts." They found Emperor Vorn hiding in his private chambers. The mighty ruler of the Keth Empire was crouched behind his throne, clutching a weapon he didn't know how to use. When Minho's soldiers entered, he tried to fight. It was pathetic. A single soldier disarmed him without effort. "Cannot do this," Vorn sputtered as they dragged him to his feet. "I am Emperor. I am chosen by the gods. You are nothing but animals." Minho said nothing. He simply led the Emperor out of the palace and into the light. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Thousands of Keth citizens watched as their Emperor was brought before them in chains. Human soldiers surrounded the area, but they did not point their weapons at the crowd. They simply stood and waited. A platform had been set up in the main square. The same broadcast drones that had once shown Una's beating now floated around it, transmitting everything to 3,000 worlds. Admiral Taiho Quan stood on the platform waiting. When Vorn was brought before him, the two leaders faced each other. "Billions of beings are watching this," Taiho said calmly. The same number who watched you beat General Park, they expect me to do the same to you. They expect me to show them that humans are just as cruel, just as brutal, just as savage as you. He leaned closer to Vorn. I'm going to disappoint them. We stepped aside, and General Unipark walked onto the platform. The crowd went silent. Across the galaxy, billions held their breath. Una stood before the Emperor who had broken her bones and spilled her blood. Her arm was in a sling. Her face still showed the marks of his violence. But she stood straight and tall, looking at him without fear or hatred.
You wanted to teach humanity a lesson, she said.
Her voice was carried across the galaxy. So I'm going to teach you one. Vorn stared at her with yellow eyes full of confusion and fear. You think power means making others kneel? Una continued. You think strength is measured by how much pain you can cause. That's why you beat me on live broadcast. You wanted to show the galaxy that you were strong and we were weak. She shook her head slowly. But you got it backwards. True power isn't about making others smaller. It's about lifting them up. True strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting them. She turned to look at the camera, at the billions watching across the stars. To every species in this galaxy, you don't have to fear humanity. We don't conquer. We don't enslave. We don't destroy worlds or murder innocents. We believe that all beings deserve freedom and dignity. Her voice grew harder. But understand this clearly. If you hurt one of us, one farmer, one child, one soldier, you face all of us, not because we're monsters, because we're family. We take care of our own, always. She turned back to Vorn. Your empire is over. Not because we destroyed it, but because your own people have seen what real leadership looks like. They've seen that strength without cruelty is possible. They will never follow you again. Vorn was taken away, sentenced to exile in a prison world at the edge of the galaxy. He would live out his days alone, with nothing but time to think about his mistakes. Princess Mira became the new leader of the Keth people. With human help, she established a democratic government where citizens had rights and voices. The Keth Empire became the Keth Republic. The species that had helped humanity during the war were rewarded. The Null Confederacy received trade agreements that made them prosperous. The Pale Council was given a seat at the new Galactic Council, where all species could speak as equals. Admiral Taiho Quan returned home a hero. Captain Hannah Shin went back to teaching, but this time she taught at the academy, training the next generation of pilots. Colonel Minho Beek retired to his farm. He was finally able to enjoy the peace he had fought so hard to protect. Dr. Somi Cha was given the Medal of Unity, the highest honor humanity could offer. But all of them said the same thing when asked about their victory. It wasn't about us. It was about her. 1 year later, General Unipark visited a school on Earth. The children gathered around her, asking questions with wide eyes and excited voices. General Park, one little girl asked, what did it feel like to face the Emperor alone? Weren't you scared? Una smiled and knelt down to look the girl in the eyes. I was scared, she admitted. Very scared. But I was never alone. How? The girl asked. You were in a cell far away from everyone, because even when I was locked in that cell, even when everything hurt and it seemed like there was no hope, I knew something that Emperor Vorn didn't understand. She looked at all the children around her. I knew that somewhere out there, my family was coming for me. Not my birth family, but my human family. Every person who wears our uniform. Every citizen who believes in what we stand for. Every human being who refuses to leave someone behind.
Ow.
She stood up, her eyes bright. That's what makes us strong. Not our ships, or our weapons, or our technology. It's that we have each other. We're never truly alone. None of us ever are. She smiled at the children. That's what it means to be human. Above the school ships flew through the blue sky, carrying travelers to distant stars. The galaxy was at peace. Not because humanity had conquered it, but because they had taught it something important. Strength and kindness could exist together. Power and mercy were not opposites. And no matter how big the galaxy became, no matter how many species humanity encountered, one truth would remain forever. Touch one of them, and you face all of them, because they were family, and families never give up on each other.